Hi everybody, welcome back to another introduction to CAD drawing. Today we're going to start on doing some 3D drawing in AutoCAD. AutoCAD works a little bit differently than some of the other programs out there like Inventor or Fusion 360, so I thought that it would be pertinent to show you some of the beginning stages to take your drawing from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions. So first off, just to be able to get started, here I have open just a brand new file, the same way that we would normally do this for a 2D drawing. And there's a couple of things that we need to change to be able to get tools to show up here for our 3D drawing. And first off, we have to click on this little drop-down box here to expand our menu options. And we're going to click on Workspace. And that shows us right now that we're working in this drafting and annotation workspace. And we're going to take the drop-down box and for right now just go to 3D Basics. What that'll do is show us a couple of the different tools that we can use in the 3D world rather than just in the 2D line drawing type stuff. So that's how you get to the 3D tools. And I thought that we would start with what my students start with here, which is the first 6 drawings that I've shown you how to draw already. There's videos on my channel on how to draw each one of these step by step. I thought that I would show you how to take these drawings and make them 3-dimensional. So the first thing that I'm going to show you also about how to move around the page. What I'm doing to zoom in and zoom out is use my mouse wheel, and what I can do if I click on the mouse wheel, push it down and move, I can pan. If I hold the Shift key as well while I'm panning, so I'm holding the Shift key and then clicking down on the mouse wheel, what that does is it allows me to orbit. And this is going to be really important when you are starting to draw in 3 dimensions. You can still use the View cube over here, and you can click on corners and you can see things that line up on exact lines here. We can say just look straight top down. We can also use this to rotate around sideways. But I find that using that Shift key with the pan, every once in a while you just need to sort of get into a little spot and it's easier to move around like this. So if we take a look at this first drawing up here, this is the friction plate, and I have an additional information drawing here that I just used to show my students what needs to happen. So this drawing number 1 here, friction plate, I'm going to make the thickness of this 1/2 inch. So we'll go back to the drawing. And the first tool that we're going to use is going to be the Press Pull tool. And if you already have a 2D drawing, or if you already have lines drawn, the Press Pull is a really good option to make a 3-dimensional object out of those lines. So I'll grab that tool, and I'm going to hover in the middle of the tool, of this friction plate, on the part that I want to extrude up. If I just hover in the very, very center of it, it's going to make this a 3-dimensional object, and it's going to forget everything about out here. So I need to hover in the middle of this thing, and I just click once, and it drags that part up, and I'm just going to specify the extrusion height as to be 0.5 or 1/2 inch, and there you go. That's it. Now, this line drawing is also this wireframe. It's sometimes a little difficult to see, to make out what exactly is 3 dimensions and where it starts and stops. So I find that coming up here to the 2D wireframe and changing this down to either realistic, or I prefer shades of gray when you're doing some of these early drawings, just to be able to see what those objects look like in 3D makes it a little bit more sense. So there's the first drawing. I'd be completely done with that one. This one is the same deal. And if I go onto here, I have the thickness as to 3/4 inch. So I'll just use the Press Pull tool again, come into the area that is the solid block area, and then say 0.75. That's my area there. Now when I come on to this one has a bunch of different parts to it. It has the outer section here. It has an inner section like a webbing, and then it has like a center hub. So what I go with on this one is that the center post is 2 inches thick, meaning that it's centered across that 2 inches. The thickness of the outer part here, the webbing, is 1/2 inch, and the outer rim total is 1 inch thick, and that's also centered on the width. So we can do this a couple of different ways. Just like everything that you do in AutoCAD, there's usually about 2 or 3 different ways to approach it. So here's how I'm going to do this. First is this center hub in here in the middle. Press pull. I'm going to assume that whatever is in the 0 flat on the Z layer here, the Z height, I'm going to assume that that's the center of this drawing. So the center section needs to be 2 inches thick, like the center post needs to be 2 inches thick total. So I'm going to come up 1 inch in the middle here. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to come up 1 inch. And then the outer thickness needs to be a 1/2 inch, so I can take this part and come up a 1/2 inch. Half of that, though, which would be 0.25. And then this outer section out here needs to come up as well, and that part needs to be 1 inch thick total, and so I'm going to come up 1/2 inch on that side. Then, because this is half of the drawing here, because we still have our lines, because the lines are on the 0 Z layer, now we can take this, we'll take the center part here, and we'll press pull that down another 1 inch. We'll press pull this center section down a 1/2 inch, 0.25. And we will take the outer rim here and bring this down, and that's going to be 1 inch total, which means it's a 1/2 inch here. So that 1/2 inch, now this thing on the outside, if I take a look at this whole thing, even though there's a line going through the middle, because we use the press pull tool, this is one solid object. Okay, this whole outer rim is one solid object. It's not 2 objects up and down. Even though I did press pull from 2 directions, these are 2 solid objects here. This part here, and then there's a 3rd section here in the middle. So just to finish this piece off, I'm going to make this all one piece, and we're going to use the union to do that. It just selects, combines and selects 3D objects. So we're going to select all 3 pieces that we want to union together, hit the Enter key, and now when I hover over top of this thing, it is all one piece. Okay, so the next one we're going to do is the rocker arm. The rocker arm is another simple one. It just is going to have 2 different thicknesses here. It's going to have the thickness of the main body part, and then the center part in the middle there with the hexagonal piece is going to be a 1/2 inch high, like a 1/2 inch off the thickness. So we're just going to go to press pull. We're going to lift up the entire outside shape here to 1/2 inch, and then we're going to come into the center section. We're going to lift this up to 1 inch. That's it. That's that piece. Now, this one over here, this one causes some problems. I'm not sure why it is that this happens, but for whatever reason, we're looking for the 1/2 inch thickness on the main body of the part, and then the left circle to be a 1/4 inch high. So, but when we go back to the drawing has the oval shape on the outside and this circular shape on the left side. When I go to press pull and I try and select the outside of the object here, basically what happens is the entire thing comes up. There's no stopping it. It's just the entire oval, and I'm not exactly sure why that happens. So I've come up with a sort of a workaround, and that is that what I'm going to do is extrude up the 3 different objects that we would need to subtract out of the middle. So watch what I mean here. I'm going to grab press pull. I'm going to take this small circle here, which is going to be a hole, and I'm going to take that way up high, 5 inches high. That's fine. I'm going to take this center part here that has the curves on either side. I'm going to bring that up 5 inches high or so. And then the last part is going to be this hexagon. I'm going to drag that way up high. Okay? Those are much, much higher than they need to be. Now, the outer thickness of this needs to be a 1/2 inch. The left circle is going to be a 1/4 inch higher than that. So if I drag this piece up to 3/4 inch, 0.75, and I drag the rest of this thing up to be 0.5, oops, select object. Drag the outside of this thing here up to be 0.5. That gives me the 2 layers that I actually need, the 1/4 of an inch higher and the 1/2 inch right here. Now we still have these big pieces sticking out of the end here, and this is a good way for us to use the subtract tool. So subtract is going to be taking pieces away, and what you have to do is select the thing that you want to subtract out of first. So I'll select this object first, and then hit enter, and then subtract the surface that you, or the object that you want to take away, and that would be this thing. I hit enter again, and it takes that whole thing out. Now, because I only had this center part, what I actually need to do is select the circle itself and the oval. So I'm going to undo what I just did there, and now I'm going to go subtract again. I'm going to grab this object and this object. I'm going to hit enter, and now I'm going to select that in the middle. And what you see is that other than that weird flat line down here that doesn't really exist, that's this piece, that whole thing punched the whole way through. Okay, we'll do the same thing with these 2 pieces. We'll take the subtract, take the first object as the thing we want to subtract out of, hit enter, subtract this piece and this piece, hit enter. Okay, that's it. So this piece down here somehow is a region, but it doesn't really exist. So I'm not sure what it's clicking and what it's not, but because I tried to do the press pull the first time, those things sort of exist there, but they don't really exist. Okay, so the last one over here is this piece, and this piece has a couple of different parts and pieces to it. The thickness is a 1/2 inch overall. That's this center section here. The hub, that would be this part on the right, that is 1 inch thick. That's going to be centered. The left ring, that's this piece over here, that's going to be 1 inch thick, and that's going to be centered. And then the far right fingers, that's these little pieces up here, those are going to be 1 inch thick as well. So we're going to have a bunch of different sections here, and we're going to have to think about the thicknesses as we move along through them. So the center section here, and we'll do this all centered, is going to be a 1/2 inch thickness. So this part right here is going to be the 1/2 inch. So if I want this to come up a 1/4 inch, 0.25, then press pull down out the bottom, take this down 0.25, and that'll be centered on the middle there. The hub that's on the left side, left ring, that's going to be 1 inch thick. So we'll take this section here, come up a 1/2 inch, and we'll go down a 1/2 inch. Over here now, this right section is going to be 3/4. So in here, if that's 3/4, 1/2 of 0.75 is 0.375. So we'll come over here and we will put this to go up 0.375. We'll have it go down the same 0.375. The hub that's in the middle, that's going to be 1 inch thick. That's this part. So we'll come up 0.5, go down 0.5, and then the last bit are these fingers that are on top of here. This piece and this piece. Now because we're doing the same pieces, we can actually do them, I guess we can't do them at the same time, but we'll do 0.5 this way, do 0.5 this way, and then we'll rotate on underneath, come down 0.5, and come down 0.5 here. Okay, now remember, this is not all the same piece, so a good idea now, after we have these things done, would be to union them together so that we know that we could do things to them later, like put fillets in between or something like that if any of the drawings called for those things. So the last thing that I would do is grab the union. We'll just select all the objects that make this whole thing up, all the parts of the fingers, hit enter. Now that's all one big solid object. So that's it. That's 3D modeling, the basics. I'm going to have some more videos coming up that go into a little bit more depth about how to use some of the other tools on the screen. But if you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe for more content, and thanks for watching.